Everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm the Business Development Manager here at Sologic North America. Thank you for joining us at our bi-weekly monthly RCA webinar. So today we'll be speaking what are regulators looking for? And speaking today will be Katie Frye. She's our instructor and facilitator. We also have Brian Hughes joining, but he'll be a fly on the wall, and he will probably be answering chat questions if you have them, and I'll be moderating.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, we're going to talk today about what are regulators looking for. And the implied statement there is from your RCA program, from your RCA investigations, and from your RCA solution. So we've got some insight into this, and we're happy to share it with you. Just want to tell you a little bit about Sologic right off the bat. We are a global company, and we do operate on most of the continents. Our headquarters are in Seattle, Washington now. We actually recently moved to Seattle this year. And myself, I am down in Savannah, Georgia. But we help organizations all over the world solve problems. And you'll notice here that we can work in any discipline or any department. Our root cause analysis methodology applies across the board to any problems, big and small. This slide has a nice slice of the pie when it comes to companies and organizations that we work with. You can see that these are pretty diverse companies. Again, we work with the government, we work with nonprofits, and we work for lots and lots of for-profit companies. And they all have one thing in common, and that's that they all have problems. Every single one of them has problems, and they are working to get better at solving those problems using root cause analysis as one of their main tools for problem solving. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. So throughout my career, I've had the unique opportunity to be exposed to a wide range of hazards across multiple industries, from standing next to a perforation gun at an oil wellhead to maneuvering boiling wort at a brewery, from navigating whitewater rapids to collect water quality samples to working at heights in a 185-foot boom lift. Each experience has given me firsthand insight into workplace risks. And I've seen companies at all stages of their hazard identification journey, from those with mature safety cultures to those just beginning to integrate risk assessment into their operations. This broad exposure that I've had has given me a very well-rounded perspective on hazard evaluation, reinforcing that while industries and environments may vary, the fundamental principles of identifying and controlling risks remain the same. And again, root cause analysis is one of those fundamentals. We've got to understand how and why we have problems so that we can develop mitigations or solutions to prevent those problems from happening again in the future. So I just want to start out with this very generic problem management process where, most of us go to work day to day, right? And we're basically in a normal state. Things are going well. Business is moving forward. Operations is moving forward. Nobody's getting injured. Life is good. And then inevitably something happens, whatever that something may be. But we've got some problem that occurs, some safety event that happens. Maybe we have an environmental release or a spill, but some negative thing happens. And first and foremost, we need to respond to that incident. We've got to take care of the injured. We need to bring our operations back into a safe, normal condition. And then we conduct the RCA. And so this kind of is where our world exists, is doing the root cause analysis. And then we're going to want to report out both internally to our organization so that we can share what we've learned and what we're going to do about it. But often, and part of the focus of today's webinar, is that we need to report out to our regulatory agencies, whoever they may be. So my question for you guys, and you can use the chat to answer this question, please. I put up some of the organizations that I've worked with most frequently, or some of the regulatory bodies that I've worked with through companies. But who requires you to do RCA in your day-to-day job? Whether it's a state agency, a federal agency, or something else, if you don't mind putting in the chat, who requires you to do an RCA? Looks like we've got State Department of Transportation. All right. We'll see what else comes through. All of the regulatory agencies, by the way, that you see on the screen do have stipulations that for certain events, you have to do an RCA. They're actually, like I guess the slide says, it is required by all of the agencies that you see here. The Joint Commission, if those of you that are not familiar, they work with hospitals and the healthcare industry. So you can imagine every now and again they have problems. You want to steer clear of those. DoD, I'm guessing that's Department of Defense agencies. Interesting. All right. Well, cool. Well, yeah, all of these agencies require root cause analysis. Province, OH&S, yeah, Canada, Army Corps of Engineers, and Department of Defense. Nice. Okay. I got to put Army Corps of Engineers up there and go look that up. And Department of Defense, actually. I'd be curious to see exactly what their Code of Federal Regulations says. Cool. Thank you guys for participating. I'm always curious to hear what you have to say. So we get to jump right in. Cut to the chase. What do they want? What do these regulators want? What are they looking for? It's kind of simple. They want to know that you, as the company, understands what your problem is, that you have done a thorough analysis of how and why that problem occurred, and that you have developed mitigating action items. These can also be called solutions, recommendations, CAPAs, corrective actions, preventative action plans. They get called lots of different things, but they're basically controls for specific causes to try to reduce risk. And risk is a combination of probability and severity, but they want to see this clear linkage starting with the problem. You've got that little red explosion on the slide a couple minutes ago, but you've got this problem and they want to see you want to connect the dots for them between the problem, evidence that you collect, information you collect, the causes that you identify, and then again, the corrective actions that you develop that will actually either reduce the severity or prevent the likelihood of that problem from happening again in the future. They just want to see that you understand what happened. They also want to feel confident that you're not hiding anything. My biggest thing is to stay off the regulatory agency's radar. And one of the best ways you can do that is by being open and transparent with them. If they feel like you're hiding something, they're just going to shine a spotlight on you more. They're going to get out that magnifying glass and take a closer look at you. And so again, by being open, honest, transparent, communicating with them, you'll likely stay off their radar. And then again, this kind of goes into the open communication. A lot of times we have short turnarounds for root cause analysis investigations. And it's not always possible to complete an RCA investigation in these short time frames. And I have yet to run across a regulatory agency that won't give you an extension if you communicate with them. Your progress so far, what has been done, what's holding you up, what are you waiting for? Generally, they will grant you those extensions, but again, they've got to feel confident that you're taking this investigation seriously, and that you are working on it. They also like to see that you started immediately, right? This is like going back to high school or grade school in general. They don't want to hear that like you just started it yesterday and now you need an extension. But if you are making a good faith effort, you jumped on that RCA as soon as the event happened and you're going down rabbit holes. Sometimes there's only it takes time, it takes effort to figure out what happened. And a lot of times you have to go down these rabbit holes and you don't know what you're going to find down there until you go. You come back up, you feel like you don't have anything, but really you now know a lot of what didn't happen. And that is just as valuable as knowing what did happen. And so again, a lot of times that can just take extra time. So as long as you communicate with them, keep them apprised of the situation, they'll generally give you those extensions. And so just to wrap this slide up, they want to feel confident that you're taking this seriously, that you are not hiding anything from them, and that you're working towards risk reduction. One of the things that they're really looking for are strong solutions. And so what do I mean by that? They want to see solutions that are within your control and effective at reducing risk. Unfortunately, I have seen solutions in the past. Sometimes, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes in RCAs, we'll come up with solutions that either don't actually solve the problem at hand, or you're asking people to do things that you don't actually have jurisdiction over. And regulatory agencies don't particularly like those solutions. They want to see you enact change within your organization to get different results in the future. One of the things that they like to see are your action items written in the SMART goal methodology, which I will show you in just a second. If you guys have been through my class or been on a webinar with me in the past, you'll know that this is one of my most key points to RCA, because we will have really good solution ideas. But if we don't write them in a way that we can assign them to somebody and that somebody can go get it done and actually check it off their list, like, yes, I have done that, I have completed it, I am done, it creates problems. We write solutions that can't be done or that are not doable action items, like ensure people wear their PPE. That is a great idea, and I am fully on board with people always wearing their PPE, but I can't assign that to Michelle. I can't assign that to Brian and say, go get it done by December 31st. When you say ensure anything, that kind of implies in perpetuity, meaning, again, you can't check it off the list that it's been completed. So I'll show you that SMART goal methodology in just a moment. More solutions that they want to see, what a strong solution looks like, is that you are driving process or system change, meaning we are changing the way we do work. So again, that we can get different results in the future. I think we've all probably heard that Einstein quote, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So if we've trained people and we ended up in the situation, and one of the causes is that training was not effective, and then we assign a solution that's simply retrain, well, that's the definition of insanity. We already trained once, we ended up here. If we go back and train exactly the same as we did before, there's no guarantee that we're going to end up in anywhere different of a place. And so we want to change something about that training. And again, we want to focus on systems, processes, procedures, not on the people. People are interchangeable parts. I know that may not be a popular idea with everyone, but in theory, we want those processes and procedures to be written in a way that anybody could follow them. Just in case we all get lucky and win the Powerball and decide to go live in sunny turquoise waters later. We want to use the hierarchy of controls. So the top three of the hierarchy of controls are elimination, substitution, and engineering. And those are the ones that if we can, if we have the resources and if we have the ability, those are our most effective solutions. So if we can just get rid of the hazard altogether, if we can substitute some nasty chemical for water, or just even a chemical that's less nasty, that's perfectly fine. Or just engineering controls, right? We use this tabletop exercise in our training about a railroad crossing, and the gates of the railroad crossing are manual gates at the time of the incident. Almost every single group comes up with a solution to install automatic gates with bells and whistles. Perfect. That's an engineering control. It would be very effective from preventing folks from crossing the track. So we're all for elimination, substitution, and engineering controls. And then we do want to include both corrective and preventative action. So back in my oil and gas days, we were having an issue with this particular type of valve freezing. I was living and working out in Colorado, so freezing temperatures were a factor for quite a few months out of the year. And these valves would freeze, they would crack, and then produce a spill. So what we were good at for a little while is replacing the valve. That's great. That does nothing to prevent future cracks. And there's a whole bunch of other valves that are also in use in the field that are that same type of valve material, which is more susceptible to freezing than other types of materials. So what you would want to do in that situation is not just fix the valve. Like, that is one solution. We should absolutely fix that one cracked valve. However, a more holistic and preventative action would be to then do a survey of the full field, look for similar valves of that same material, and also go ahead and get a replacement program from them. Now, depending on the risk of that valve, like maybe how close is it to a navigable water of the United States? Or how close is that valve or that wellhead to residents? Depending on that risk analysis, then you could implement like a phased plan. Like, we're going to replace the valves that have the highest risk based on waters of the United States or your neighbors. We're going to replace those first. Maybe it's going to be a very large capital project to change all these out. So we start with the high risk ones and we slowly work our way down, but we take a methodical risk-based approach. And so again, we fix what's been broken, but also try to prevent future breaks. And also, I can't remember right now if we actually put insulation around some of these, like in the fall, or if we added heat trace. But either way, we even took that extra step because even that next material, we may still get a hard deep freeze. And so we still need a little extra protection. And so by fixing what's broke, replacing the material, and adding insulation or heat trace, those are 3 solutions. Sorry, I was putting up before. Those are 3 solutions that gives us really good layers of protection to, again, reduce the severity. Nope, those are all going to reduce the probability, not so much the severity. We'd have to add secondary containment around there to get the severity to be reduced. But those are 3 good examples of attacking the problem from different directions or different perspectives. And then another thing that you want to do with these solutions is you want to make sure you get buy-in. So hopefully your RCA team, the ones on the team, are the ones suggesting solutions and that they have some control or they have some stake in getting these action items done or completed. They either own the purse strings or they're in the department where this responsibility would fall so that they can help develop a robust plan. What I've seen happen occasionally, and I've been a part of this, is that we think of really good ideas sitting in the office, and when we turn them over to maintenance or operations, they're not realistic, and they're going to tell us all the ways that won't work. And so instead of doing that rework, it would be very beneficial to have them involved from the very get-go. It is always going to be our baseline philosophy to involve the frontline workers. They know how the work gets done. They generally already have ideas for solutions. They're just so knowledgeable about the day-to-day workings of the business. You've got to involve those frontline workers in the whole process. Here is the SMART goal methodology. So I wish Sologic could take credit for this, but we can't. This comes from the project management world. So the S stands for specific. So that just means, as you see, defining who, what, when, and where, and why. When you turn that action item over to somebody, a perfect action item, they won't have any questions. They understand exactly what they have to do, when they have to do it by, who they need to go talk to in case they have any issues, what resources they have. No ambiguity. They are able to take that solution and run with it. The M is for measurable. And so we want to write that solution in a way that we know if it's getting done. Again, ensuring people wear their PPE, it's really hard to know if that's actually getting done out in the field. The A is for attainable. And so you want these solutions to be realistic given the resources. I love going big, right? Go big or go home. I love going big with solutions, but we do want to make sure that they are attainable given the potential resources. You also want to make sure that your solutions are proportionate to your problem. If you have a $10,000 problem and you're asking for $10 million of solutions, it may not get approved. They might be really great solutions and good ideas, but it just may not get approved. But if you've got a $5 million problem and you're asking for $50,000 of solutions or $100,000 of solutions, that makes a lot of sense. And most leadership teams are probably going to easily approve those solutions because of the cost that it's going to end up saving the organization. The R is for relevant. Again, what I've seen occasionally, this doesn't happen very often, but occasionally in RCAs, we'll think of a great idea. It doesn't actually solve the problem at hand. And you want to show that clear linkage between your problem and the solutions. Some of the best solutions ideas may not solve any of the causes that led to this particular event. And when your regulators see that, it's just going to raise red flags with them, and it could cause them to ask questions and to want to dig in a little bit deeper, which again, you're trying to stay off their radar. You want to submit your report and just have them approve it because your report is so clear. And then the T is for time bound. And this is just as simple as giving your action item a due date so that whoever gets assigned it, they know, do I need to do this by next Friday or do I have till June 31st of next year? It's pretty simple, but it is very important. All right, so let's get into some of the things that they don't want to see. These are tried and true. Most regulatory agencies do not want to see discipline or punishment as an RCA solution. If your organization feels like that is warranted, that's fine. We just ask that it's like outside the scope of the RCA. Discipline and punishment, in my opinion, is not an effective solution. If it was an effective control, it would be on the hierarchy of controls, but it's not. So it just does not do a lot to reduce risk. Again, the probability and the severity. Another thing that I actually see very common is that sharing lessons learned or maybe sharing a safety blast is the solution to the RCA. And I just want to pause you for a second and say that is part of the process. It's not an effective solution. And so when you are done with your RCA, absolutely, we should always share those lessons learned. We should always put that report in a public place that people can reference it. If we want to send a safety blast to the whole company, again, telling them what happened, a very brief summary of how and why it happened, and then what will be done to prevent it from happening again, listing out those solutions as an FYI, as an awareness communication, that is great. It's just not a solution. Again, it's one of the last steps in your process after an RCA investigation. Regulators don't want to see generic solutions like be more careful or communicate better as a solution. These are also things that are going to cause you to be on their radar because they know at this point that these things are not, they're not effective. Be more careful is not a smart solution. You don't know how much care that person took the first time to measure if they're taking extra care the second or third time or down the road. Again, communicate better. Communication's a fun one because when we really start to break down communication, we've got a sender and a receiver. And sender can send things, receiver cannot receive it. Or maybe the sender sends something that isn't comprehensible or understandable. And so, of course, this person doesn't understand whatever they're trying to send. I encourage you to dig down deeper into communication issues to figure out where that breakdown is. And again, is it verbal? Is it written? Is it written in an email? Is it written in a procedure? Like, where is this communication communicated? I know that's redundant. But these are all opportunities to actually dig deeper into your RCA so that you can get specific causes so you can get to more specific solutions. Regulators don't want to see bare minimum pencil whipped RCAs. 5 whys are a great place to start. And 5 whys were the bee's knees like 30, 40 years ago. But at this point, most problems require more than 5 causes, and they require branches, right? I mean, most problems are not a linear 5 cause chart. They're just not. Problems are complicated. They touch multiple processes. They touch multiple departments. So you've got to dig in deeper. You got to go down those rabbit holes. If you are doing the bare minimum, which I don't think anybody is necessarily, but if you're just trying to check that box, they know. And that's going to get you on their radar. Another thing they don't want to see are repeating causes. That is an indication of a deeper problem within your organization, this systemic neglect. So when they start to see the same causes popping up over and over, it tells them that your solutions aren't being effective. And again, this is just going to get us on their radar, and they're going to take a deeper, closer look at us. If we go into generic causes, these are almost the flip side of those generic solutions, but generic causes such as human error, procedure not followed, or complacency. When you say this is the singular root cause, the person was complacent, that's it. That's all it is. We're going to tell them to be more careful, that we're done. It just does not satisfy regulators anymore. They want to know how that employee was allowed to get complacent, which, by the way, everybody gets complacent. Complacency is just a natural place that we arrive when we do something over and over again with no negative results. I'm complacent every single day when I tie my shoes. I don't have to be in critical thinking mode to tie my shoes. Now, overall, it's a low risk task. So is it okay that I'm complacent when I'm tying my shoes? I think so. I'm sitting down while I do it. It's pretty obvious if I don't tie them right immediately, so I can redo it. It's a low risk task. Brushing my teeth is my other example. totally complacent. I'm usually thinking about 100 other things when I'm brushing my teeth. I'm absolutely complacent. I know I do it, but I can't tell you exactly how many times I went around in a circle on one particular tooth or anything like that. It's a generic cause, and we want to keep going. Same thing with human error, same thing with procedure not followed. Why was the procedure not followed? How was the procedure not followed? Any one of these generic causes is where I like to lean in because things are getting interesting. As soon as we get to this place, keep on going. There is a lot of good information if you keep asking how and why when you get to one of these generic causes. And then again, we've got this linear 5 why. So it's a great place to start. We can do a 5 why very quickly. And, generally your team can even give you several 5 whys for any particular event. But we don't want to stop there. And we don't want to just turn in a report that only has 5 causes. I guarantee you there's probably more causes that led to that event. So let's take the flip side of that coin. What do they like to see? If there's evidence of cross-department collaboration, generally speaking, regulatory agencies like to see that. Again, this kind of means that you're taking the time to pull different folks from different departments into your RCA investigation. And by pulling in those different departments, you're going to get a wider variety of solutions that are more likely to reduce risk of that thing from happening again. So these are indicators that you're taking your RCA program seriously and that you're taking problem solving seriously. If they can see evidence that you are trying to get a thorough understanding of the gap that exists between work as imagined, which is our procedures, and then the way work is actually getting done in the field, there's a gap. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it's really, really, really big. But in that gap are your causes that led to this event. And so when you're talking to your field folks, when you're talking to your training and development team, when you're using your SOPs as evidence or supplemental documentation to actually show where we started to drift from those SOPs, again, these are indicators to the regulatory agency that you're taking the time, that you're taking the patience, that you're taking this seriously to truly get at those systemic causes or to get at the non-human related causes that allowed this event to happen. Again, this is kind of a repeat, but just being honest, having transparent communication, taking accountability, taking responsibility for the company's actions without blaming individuals shows those regulatory agencies, again, that you are a mature program, that you are truly looking for ways to reduce risk. And then I once heard a very wise person ask, do you see RCA investigations as an opportunity or an obligation? And at the time, this hit me really hard. This was early on in my RCA career. And I definitely saw RCA investigations as extra work. It was a hat that I got tossed that wasn't part of the job description when I got hired. I saw it as extra work that I had to do. This is even coming from somebody who liked RCA. I actually enjoyed the process. I thought it was really cool to problem solve. To me, it was like a big puzzle. And so I enjoyed it, but it was still extra work. And so I was still trying to get it done quickly. And so this was a hat that I was delegated, and I already had plenty of hats to keep me busy. So I've thought about that question a lot over the years. And I think, again, most of us start out seeing RCA as an obligation, but if we can shift our focus to opportunity, then it stops feeling like extra work and it starts feeling like an investment. Again, this is when I was environmental compliance specialist for that oil and gas company. So I was doing a lot of environmental incidents, but engineering department was like, hey, can you help us with this little issue we're having over here? So I did. I went and facilitated an RCA with them, and I learned so much about what the engineering department does that I had no clue. How could I, or why would I? But I got to learn a lot about the engineering on the front end of drilling wells. And then the finance department was having some issues. And so the finance department invited me in. You're kind of getting to go behind the curtain a little bit, but they invited me in to facilitate an RCA for them. So again, now I'm learning more about my company in a way that I was getting exposed to people and processes for the company that I wasn't getting otherwise. And so being a curious And dedicated RCA facilitator is truly an investment in yourself and an investment in the company. Ultimately, it's going to lead to safer operations and also the relationship between, again, the company and me. I became a better employee. And by participating and really leading these cross-functional teams, I learned so much more about the inner workings of the company I work for, which positioned me very well when it came time for raises and promotions, because I just knew more about the company. And so no matter what your discipline, education, or background, employers want effective problem solvers. So if you take RCA seriously and you truly see them as opportunities to learn and reduce risk, then you'll be an effective problem solver. And everybody wants problem solvers. The last thing is just having a consistent RCA methodology across your organization. So whichever method you choose, using it every single time. One, you're going to get lots of practice, so you're going to get better at it. But then again, it's showing your regulatory agency that you're taking this seriously. You've adopted a methodology and you're following it. All right, so let's just take a little quick deep dive into like one of these generic solutions like retrain. And so often we will see something like inadequate training or poor training as a cause on a chart. But use these moments to drill down or dig deeper into the details. So again, going down that rabbit hole is where you will find specific issues or specific causes that will lead to sustainable and effective systemic improvement. And so when I hear inadequate training, immediately I'm like, tell me what was inadequate about it. Now, I have no idea, but I can ask like, well, is the content clear? Is the content sufficient? Because sometimes what I hear is that like this person never was trained on this particular thing, like this one little piece of knowledge, but they've been through training, they're certified. It just never included this one little thing. So maybe the content was insufficient, and that's okay. Nobody has a crystal ball. We can't teach every single possible thing that could happen in every training. That's okay. You do the best you can with the knowledge you have at the time. Now we have an event that has triggered this RCA. We now know that this content wasn't included, so add it. It's no big deal. Let's just add this content into the training. Another thing to consider is the delivery. So right now we're kind of doing a training right here, right? We're going through a webinar. It's digital. But certain tasks may require hands-on demonstration. Certain tasks like driving a forklift requires certification. We all had to go get a driver's license to drive a car. We had to pass a written test and a driver test. And you had to practice for like a whole year when we were 15 or however old you were in your state. But let's talk about that delivery method. Was it adequate or was it sufficient for this particular task and the risks that are associated with this task? And then also the frequency. How often do we give this training? There's plenty of trainings I take once when I get hired. I don't remember everything that was in every single one of those trainings. But some trainings some tasks are high risk enough that we have to take that training every single year. Oil and gas days, I had to take H2S every single year. I had to take lockout tagout every single year. And that first year, it really freaked me out as an environmental person. I'm like, I don't want to die from H2S, and I don't know the first thing about lockout tagout. Like, I'm never going to touch a box. I'm never going to touch a lock. What I realized is it was more of an awareness training for me, but an actual training for the field guys. But it was very beneficial for me to sit in there and listen to what they were learning. And then here's the big question. How do we know that anybody actually understood what we were saying? Like, how do we confirm that learning? The one way to do it is a test. And then also engaging, asking questions, having people demonstrate, whether it's a written test or a hands-on test. But these are questions that you may want to ask if you hear that training didn't go well or we have poor training. Then again, we want to align training with the task performance. This goes back to the H2S and the lockout tagout. For me, do I need to be aware of these things, or do I need to actually go out and be able to perform these tasks? Because how I listen to that training, how I approach that training is going to be different depending on my level of involvement in that particular task. And then we've got to consider different learning styles, right? I mean, we've got a pretty good age spread right now in the workforce, and technology is changing very quickly. And so again, are we doing this training through digital means? Are we doing it in person, face to face? How much hands-on time are people getting? Do you have to go practice for 2 weeks and then pass a test? Or do we need to just do this once right now? You pick up the fire extinguisher, squeeze, or no, pull the pin, aim, squeeze, sweep, right? Pass method. Do you just have to do that once right now, or do you need to do this, go practice, and then take a test in 2 weeks? I don't know, but something to consider. So when you get into training, really think about all these different aspects of training and how each one could have led to the quote, inadequate training or poor training. Again, within those details are specific solutions that will truly reduce your risk. And so one of the things that regulatory agencies are looking for is that your training programs verify learning effectiveness, not just that you're checking a box. You don't just show the roster, yep, we took the training, we're done. It's like, are we actually learning whatever we're supposed to be learning in that training? So how do we do all this, right? You're probably looking at me like, great information, Katie, thanks. How do we do it? I can tell you that a facilitator can really make or break an RCA. Having a facilitator that's trained in not just RCA methods, but leading project teams, leading groups. Somebody who is truly curious. Here's the great Ted Lasso quote, right? Be curious, not judgmental. I will be honest with you guys right now. There have been times when I've been in RCAs and people are telling me things that are absolutely bonkers. I cannot believe they're telling me what they're telling me, but it's their truth. It's what they either think really happened or what they really did. It's only with hindsight are we sitting over here judging that like, this is not good. But they were making the best decision they could at the time with the information they had available. And so that is when I lean in and I have zero judgment. I want to know exactly what was going on. I want to know what they were thinking about. I want to know their risk analysis. I want to know their risk tolerance. There's so much I want to know, but you've got to lean in and listen to these folks and be curious, not judgmental. And then one of my favorite things is asking open-ended questions. If I ask any one of you, if we're in an RCA and I say, hey, again, Brian, did you follow the SOP that day? What's your answer, Brian?
Yeah.
Exactly. He's going to give me that desire. Yeah, of course I followed the SOP. Yes, ma'am, I sure did. And he's also satisfied the question, right? I asked a yes or no question. He gave me a yes or no answer. It doesn't leave me a lot of places to go. But if I ask Brian, hey, tell me about how you did that task that day. Like, what's the first step? And then he starts walking me through the task. And I say, all right, well, what'd you do second? What'd you do third? Well, how'd you know to do that next? If we actually ask open-ended questions and get him or her to explain the task, then I can go get the SOP and compare my notes of what that person told me they did versus the SOP. This is not so I can get you. It's so that I can, again, understand where we deviated from work as imagined versus work as performed. I'm always trying to identify where that drift started and how big did that gap get. But by asking these open-ended questions about how work is actually performed, that is going to get you to these answers. And again, involve other people so that that one person isn't just sitting in the hot seat. Ask other employees how they do the task. One of the things I like to do is invite the most junior person in and invite a senior person in. Tenure, not necessarily age, but just recent hired versus been around for a while. They're going to have very different perspectives. And both perspectives are really valuable in this overall process. And so then again, credibility through transparency. And this is true as a facilitator, building transparency with your RCA team. And then it's also true with us as a company having transparency with the regulators as well. Again, we want to get along with them. I mean, I'm kind of speaking for everybody right now, but I mean, I would think that like we truly do want to get along with them. I mean, we overall want the same goals. We want the public to be safe. We want to be good stewards of the environment. We want the same things out of life. So I wish I had a magic wand. I wish I could tell you some magic words, some sentence to tell you the secret to being a good facilitator. But the truth is, it is, I would say, mostly practice and a genuine interest in problem solving. Again, this goes back to that, be curious. Like, you're genuinely a curious person. I like to say, if you're the kind of person that like kicks it on a rainy day and watches mega disasters, mega engineering disasters, because they always explain how these things happen. If you like to watch how stuff is made on the Discovery Channel, if you like to watch the Discovery Channel in general, you're probably on the right track to becoming a good RCA facilitator, because you are curious about how things work or why things are the way they are. And then again, you got to throw in a whole bunch of practice with that as well. But repetition is good. So just getting lots of practice, which is kind of sad, because if you're getting lots of practice, that means you're having lots of problems. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. So here's a little bit of I guess, extra credit is what I called it. This is kind of like going above and beyond. Once you get a good handle on your RCA program, you could invite your regulators in. I understand that this is taking a gamble, and I'm guessing there's probably half the people on this call today that think I'm bonkers for even doing this or suggesting it, but invite them into your process. Again, this goes a long way with transparency, and show them, my goal as a company is aligned with your goal as a regulator. Again, we want to keep people safe. We want to keep the environment clean. We want to turn a profit. That's good for everybody. When I worked in oil and gas, I came in, and one of the regulators, we did not have a good relationship with this person, and we were on their radar, and we would get letters. Every time this person was in the field, they were looking for any kind of deficiency to write us a letter. And I kind of walked into this, and, it created a lot of paperwork. We did not have a good relationship. We literally didn't like this person. I say the collective we, and I didn't know why. At the end of the day. So somewhere along the way, I got the bright idea to invite this person out with me to report a spill. We had a spill, and I just invited them. And I didn't invite them to meet me at the location. I actually invited them to meet me at my office and hop in the truck with me. I love windshield time. Brian knows this. We travel together. We get good windshield time. I love getting to know people and just chatting with them, like finding a way to relate. And so this regulator and I jumped in the truck, went out to our site, but, figured out we had a lot in common. We were about the same age. I recognized him from college. We went to the same school, and we just chatted. And so that helped develop the relationship. But then also when we get to the field and I'm showing him honestly, I'm like, hey, this is how I measure a spill. This is how I fill out the form. These are the assumptions I am making. And he was able to give me a little bit of guidance and give me little tips and tricks to improve that. But then he also just enjoyed being a part of it. And he was understanding how we came up with these calculations. And it turned that relationship around. What we started getting was informal emails of, hey, I was out in the field and I noticed blah, blah, blah. Now, where the real trust happened is that I would say, no, don't worry, I'm on it. And I would have to go talk to operations, and we would figure out how to address whatever the problem was. And then I would go out there and I'd take pictures of us fixing it or correcting it or whatever the case may be. And then I would send those pictures back to close the loop so that he knew I wasn't giving him lip service. We really did, fix the problem or whatever. This goodwill and this good faith ended up spilling into other programs that we had with that particular regulatory agency. With oil and gas, there's a whole bunch of stuff you have to do throughout the year to be in compliance. And this whole getting him in the truck with me right now, just trying to be friends, which I know sounds silly, but it worked for me. That's why I put this in here, is just invite them in, again, be open, transparent. I try to imagine these people, they're just humans doing their job too. Again, we want the same goals. So it was a big moment. We totally turned that relationship around, and it was quite pleasant for the next couple of years. Another extra credit thing we can do is our own internal audits, right? You've got the continuous process improvement cycle, plan, do, check, act. So check. Let's do our own gap analysis. Let's do our own audits internally. Let's find and correct those issues or that bad stuff before the regulatory agency does. It can be annoying. Again, as part of an EHS team, I fully understand it's a little annoying to operations that we're doing our own internal audits and getting findings and assigning them work, but it's better in the long run. We're not getting NOVs. We're not getting actual fines. We're not having any financial impacts because we're taking care of that stuff before it becomes a problem, before we get on the radar with these regulatory agencies. And so then again, just last thought, basically a strong RCA process is good for both you and both you from a compliance standpoint, but also from a business standpoint. Most of the time, if you are in good standings with your regulatory agencies, then it means you truly are a safe, good stewards of the environment kind of company. It's an indicator, or it's a positive symptom of a healthy organization. Most of the organizations I work for as a consultant, right, they have 3 stated goals. The first goal is to keep employees and the public safe. Goal number 2 is to be good stewards of the environment. And goal number 3 is to make a profit. Again, these are their stated goals. If you have a strong RCA program where you are taking it seriously, you're developing good, strong solutions that truly reduce risk, then you're in alignment with your goals. Customer service is likely a priority, and that's going to be positively impacted as well. Now, if you're a nonprofit or a government agency, then your stated goals might be a little different. But I've not worked with any organization that doesn't want to keep people in the public safe and be good stewards for the environment. That's always listed at the top of their priorities. So, strong RCAs don't just satisfy regulators, they make your organization better. And I like pretty pictures, so here's a whole bunch of pictures from traveling the last couple of years. But that brings us to the end of the webinar. I'm curious, what questions do folks have? Or what, I don't know if you guys have any stories that you can share.
Hey, Katie.
Yes.
Can I talk now?
Yeah, of course.
Really? Okay. Well, I have 2 stories. Can I share
Okay.
2 stories? All right.
Please.
Okay. So, hey,
There you are.
here I am. So, Carmen's over there too, but you can't really see her. She's kind of fuzzy. Um, so one, we used to do a bunch of work with the FAA back in the 2000s, and I remember wandering around the big Boeing wide body facility in Everett, Washington, with one of the lead FAA inspectors, and I asked him a question. I said, "Hey, Frank." Do you work together with Boeing to try to, help them solve problems? And he said, no. And he said, and the reason that he said, I want them to solve problems. I want them to have efficient processes. I hope that they're profitable and all that other stuff. He said, but I work for the United States people, and my job is to ensure that they are safe, and I'm their representative in this factory. And what my job is to ensure that Boeing is building that 767 per the guidelines that we signed off on. He said, we don't tell them how to build planes. We hold them to account and hold them to the standards that they set for themselves, that we agreed on, that if they build to those standards, then they're going to be in compliance with the build cert for that airplane. He said, so you know what? I don't want to be their friend. I want to be the bulwark, holding them to account to ensure that they're building quality, because I work for us, not for them. And, it was I'm paraphrasing, obviously. He might use his words a little differently, but I thought that was pretty illuminating. And then on the other side, actually, I have 3. One, I was in a construction meeting with AGC, the Association of General Contractors. And I sat down after I gave my presentation, because I had a few minutes at the beginning, and then I sat down next to a guy who was sitting all by himself, and there were like 40 other contractor representatives around the table, and like at least 3 seats between him and the others. And then I found out he was the OSHA guy, the OSHA inspector. And but he was of the opinion that every single problem somebody needed to get in trouble and and actually be blamed over, or else they didn't find the true root cause. And in his mindset was that root causes always were resistance, and that you need to blame in order to prove. And I was like, wow. And then I moved 2 down.
How old was that person, Brian? Just curious, give or take.
Well, he was like in his probably late uh, early 60s. So he's an older
Yeah.
dude at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that's tends to be the elder workforce that focuses on blame and singular root causes.
Yeah.
Um,
We
Not
have
exclusively, but you could, yeah.
we have one question,
Yeah.
Brian. It is now 2025. Does a single root cause trap still persist as a problem-solving bias with some regulatory agencies or
Yeah.
individual agency inspectors?
Oh yeah, it does. Katie and I have been working with folks that interface with the FRA, and it's not universal, but yeah, for sure. Then especially depending on the industries, there are some people that are, it's just going to take a generation. It's going to take some folks a generational turnover. But
well,
yeah, I am.
something, so it's funny because that question, I'm actually like helping an organization deal with this right now because their regulatory body wants them to identify the root cause
Mm,
as well as contributory causes. And so
mhm,
we actually did exactly what I just said. We actually invited the regulatory folks into the root cause analysis training so that
mhm,
they can get visibility into the process. And me as a third party person got to ask that person, or it was actually a group of them, how do you define root cause? I was
mhm.
like, because if you can help us understand how you define root cause, then we can better identify it for you. Because what they'll do is they'll kick it back. They'll kick back the reports and they'll say,
Mhm.
that's not a root cause. Okay, well, what is it or how do you define it? Because that is what we believe the root cause was. Um, so I think, yes, to answer your question, Stephen, the single root cause trap still persists. And there is no firm definition on what a single root cause is amongst agencies, amongst regulatory bodies, even amongst the RCA community itself.
Oh
There is
yeah.
not a cohesive, agreed upon definition. And I can tell you that it's our philosophy, mine and Brian's and Sologic's, that one of the reasons why this is so hard to define is because it simply doesn't exist. If
Yeah.
you
Oh,
focus on a singular root cause, then that really limits your solutions. And we don't want to limit solutions. We want to come at this problem from multiple angles. So, again,
mhm.
identifying multiple causes so you can have multiple solutions to give you the best risk reduction with layers of protection.
Yeah, Steve Massey, who asked that question, he definitely knows all of that through in and throughout. We've been working with Steve for many, many years. He's super knowledgeable in the world of environmental, and he probably knows other things too, Steve. I don't want to sell you short. So, but yeah, it still persists. So Katie, one other thing you mentioned is when you're working together with the regulator, in defense related projects, you've got DCMA, and I don't think the DCMA was on your list, right? But Defense Contractor Management Agency. And they're like the Pentagon's representative at
Hmm.
major defense contractors, and they act as a regulator in many respects. But I did several RCAs on Joint Strike Fighter, on different defense related projects, and I can't remember exactly. I think this was on the Joint Strike Fighter as it was still in production, and working for one of the suppliers to Lockheed, who they had some issues with because the F-35 has electrically powered actuators for flight control surfaces, and it was a new system, and they had some issues in the test design with some arcing and some things like that because they take a lot of juice. And I remember sitting down and having DCMA guys in the room because they just go wherever they want. And so there were a couple of them. And I thought it was really a little bit of a different approach than what Frank from the FAA described about working with Boeing. These guys participated in the RCA. They were very interested. They were very knowledgeable. They were very engaged. I almost forgot that they were acting on a regulatory behalf, and that openness. And I don't know if that's normal for them or not, but it's been my experience that DCMA has in all of the RCAs that I ever did with them, that they were very, very, they were engaged and helpful. And that process was open, and because they saw the entire process, it actually helped with the relationship. So
Mhm.
just for
Well,
that.
and something you said too made me think, I don't expect to be friends
No.
or I don't expect friendships to develop between these organizations and regulators, but we can be friendly and we can acknowledge that we're working towards a same goal. And so I think my point with some of that stuff is like not to have the wall between us, again,
Right.
like allow them to come behind the curtain, right? Like Wizard of Oz, like pull back the curtain for them. It's okay. Let them in. Now, look, you got to make sure your house is clean, okay? I 100% make sure your house is clean, make sure things are in good order. Get prepared. You are inviting them in.
Mhm.
But once you do all those things, pull
Mhm.
back the curtain and let them see. It will go a long way to build that trust, build that transparency. And again, at the end of the day, you just want off their radar. They're never going to stop regulating you. That's their job. And they're
Right.
government agencies. We have literally appropriated money from us, the citizens, to these organizations, OSHA, EPA, et cetera. They're going to have to do their job. You just want to stay off the radar. Let them go fry the bigger fish.
That's right. That's like Michelle on these webinars. Michelle's like our regulator.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly.
High compliment. Stephen also said, thanks, Brian, Katie. In my experience, when dealing with regulatory agencies, it's critical for company management to take responsibility for the problem, not reactively blame the worker, as Katie noted, to set the tone with the agency for an unbiased investigation.
Yep. Yep. I was talking to somebody this morning, again, as a good facilitator. I will put down my pencil. I will take my hands off the keyboard sometimes and I will just listen. And I have to interpret what folks are telling me because they're giving me so much convoluted information, right? People don't talk to you in these perfect little cause and effect relationships that are going to end up on your chart. They're explaining to you with very high emotion a lot of the time what was happening, what did happen, what happened 5 years ago that set up this whole situation. And so, as a facilitator, you got to listen to all of that and then distill it down. But again, having that openness and that curiosity that's like, tell me more. I'm trying to understand how this happened. That it goes a long way to developing a facilitator.
Well, awesome, Katie. I learned a ton. I thank you. Thanks so much for doing all the research and the prep. It was really good. And yeah, it was fun to be an attendee versus, the one delivering the webinar. But this is a great subject, and I thought you did a great job. So
Yeah.
thanks
And
a
if
lot.
anybody wants to chat more, if we've got the little cogs turning in your brain and you want to chat more, I love talking about this stuff. I can give you a dozen more examples of working with organizations. So please feel free to reach out to myself, to Brian, to Michelle. She can get you in touch, but we love hearing from you. So reach out to us if you need help or if you just want to chat through anything. But thank you so much and have a great weekend.